when you have been with somebody for over 20 years, I mean, even just loving somebody, it doesn't matter if it was 20 years, it's a loss. They are going through a loss, and there's stages of loss. We know that as therapists, right? She might be in her anger stage. She might be saying, I am ready to go. I don't want to do this anymore. But there's stages of anger, right?
Yeah, that makes sense because, I mean, for sure, Jada is at a stage where she's a little unapologetic. She's at a point where she's just like, this is what it is. I can't pretend no more. I mean, she's like, we've been secretly separated for 7 years. Can you imagine the toll that has to take on someone? Secretly separated for 7 years. There's no marriage there. Legally you are, but there really is no marriage, and you have to carry on as if you're married. You have to put a dress on and fake smile for the cameras with this man that you ain't even been intimate with. There's no relationship there. I mean, that is a very tough thing to deal with, and I think Jada may be a little further down the line with that separation, and probably closer than what it seems like Will was, because Will's defending his honor in front of everybody, and she's like looking crazy, like, dude, I'm not really your wife.
Mm-hmm.
And that just tells us how hard it is, because with the marriage dissolving, it's always one person in that marriage ready to go, and then the other person isn't quite ready to let go. And so, the fear of the unknown is what makes these transitions really painful. And one of my last questions before we wrap this up is that, what is the best way to deal with uncertainty when you're moving from one status? Either you're moving or you're being pushed from one status to that of another status. How do you deal with that uncertainty?
I mean, everybody has their own way. I think I wanted to touch on one thing you said. I think that I think you are accurate. I think that Jada is further along in this process than Will. I recall seeing one of the episodes of the Red Table Talk, and he was talking about how he threw, it was one of her birthdays. He threw this huge party. I mean, it was over the top, and she thought it was so ridiculous because she didn't want the party. So he threw this huge party. It's, to me, that speaks to his denial. You don't wake up today and decide that, I want to be done, or, this is not working for me anymore. They've been going through this process for quite some time. And that's been revealed as well, when she started the Red Table Talk, and some of the conversations that she's had. And so, I think it's just really important. It's going to come down to everybody's coping skills, everybody's mindsets, everybody's priorities.
We don't know, but I find this topic really intriguing because I would say mostly in my practice, most of the couples that I see in my practice as a therapist are couples contemplating separation or divorce, or I'm dealing with couples who are thinking about, we have these relationship issues, and should we deal with these issues before we make the transition to get married? And so to help me with this conversation today, I have my fellow social work friend and colleague. She's joining me today. And if I just think that what we're facing is that Jada has written this tell-all book, including her story, and some of it is pretty shocking. She's revealing some really personal things about herself. And that's another thing about transitions that we'll get into today, is that when you make a transition with another person, how do you negotiate how you're going to communicate this transition to the public? And is it something that you're doing together as a couple, to put out a statement? We as a couple put this statement out that we're making this transition. And it makes sense when you're filming movies and you're in the public eye and you spend time apart. It's really hard to do that. And it's difficult navigating that particular change. You also mentioned something really interesting about your identity. I mean, she took on this identity. She was a step parent when they got married at a young age, because Will was already had a child with the previous relationship. And I mean, that's a tough thing to kind of take on. And I'm just curious about, like, what would you suggest people do when they're trying to embrace a new identity, such as moving from being a married person to now this single person being who and what they are? What do you think about taking those steps? And, you know, in the form of what Jada is doing, she wrote a book about it. So that's her way of embracing this new stage in her life. But for all of us, how do we embrace this transition of deciding who and what we were previously? We don't want to be that anymore.
You know, some people try things, unhealthy things, to get around those things by getting into other relationships or drinking or partying and all that. And at the end of the day, the most important relationship you have is with yourself. You are the person that's going to be with you the longest of anyone on earth, is your relationship with yourself. That's the most important. And so I would encourage someone going through that to really focus on what they need at this time, to be gracious. I hope that they both, you know, can heal and, you know, take the time that they need to, you know, come on the other side of this. They will.
And I love where you're coming from, because it's almost like you're advocating for compassion and self-compassion. And it just seems as if your coping mechanism.
I don't remember what he exactly did with that birthday, but it's almost like he was like, she's not happy, you know, she's not, you know, been really engaged in this relationship. So I'm going to do this big grand thing, you know, and if I do that, then maybe she'll see, you know, how much I love her, or we need to be together, or whatever.
He's a man that's suffering because he's losing his marriage. It will be difficult in this moment. But on the other side of this, it's going to be hard, but it's short-lived. Just know that it's short-lived. And in the long run, you'll be way much more happier, because there's millions of people, billions of people in this world that you could possibly get with. One person's not going to stop no show, you know?
And I think we have to be gracious. We have to extend grace to other people. When I first saw it, you know, I said, their business is not my business. You know, I would hope that she had a conversation with Will and her family, if she's revealing things in a book, you know, that impact, you know, kids, her mother, other people in her life. I would hope that she, you know, would have had a conversation with them, to prepare them that, you know, this is something that I want to do. She may have sought their blessing. They may have given it or not given it, but I hope that she would have at least been considerate enough, especially with Will, because I haven't read the book, but I assume that she's talking a lot about their relationship dynamic. And so, you know, I would hope that she would have been gracious to him in that way. But, you know, if not, you know, we have to focus on taking care of ourselves and, you know, doing what we need to do to maintain our own health, right, at the end of the day. And so, you know, transitions happen all the time. They're expected. What did I lose out on? You know, not wanting to have regrets. And so I see her as really just pulling away and saying that now is my time. And I want to live my life on my own terms.
God, I mean, that is a very fresh perspective, I would have to say, because if you look at the internet, the comments and the backlash that she's getting from the public has been very, very negative. And the way you put it puts a human touch on it, because I can so relate to everything that you just said. And I mean, when you get married and you think you're going to be this one person in your 20s, 25, 30 years later, you can't be that same person. And it is possible for you and your partner to actually grow apart. And that's unfortunate, because there are things that you can do to make sure, just like you and your husband celebrated all these years. I know there were ups and downs, and as any relationship. Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Alicia with Coaching with Dr. Alicia. And I want to welcome everybody to our discussion on transitions. And I know, as many of you all have heard this weekend, Will and Jada Smith, for 7 years now, have made a very painful transition in their marriage. And they've been living with this for 7 years. They have made this transition of being a young married couple living together, raising children together, to separating, living apart, co-parenting from a distance, all while maintaining an external exterior as if they were married. So from the way it looks,
so I would encourage someone going through that to really focus on what they need at this time, to be gracious. We all make mistakes. We all, we do the best for the most part with the awareness that we have at the time. But to be gracious with yourself and to really take care of, your needs, because if you are healthy and you take care of yourself, you're going to be better in all your other relationships. It's very sad to see. And, I wish the best for both of them. I hope that they both, can heal and, take the time that they need to, come on the other side of this. They will.
Yeah, I think they will. And I love where you're coming from, because it's almost like you're advocating for compassion and self-compassion. And it just seems as if your coping mechanism, sometimes you're not really ready to deal with the reality. And so, yeah,
right.
you do.
And I think we've seen that with Will.
Yes, denial.
The denial, the bargaining, I'll do this. I'm just using an example.